Chapter 1: The Night Shift. Alex was sitting in the radio station studio watching the clock on the wall. Just 1 hour left until the end of his night shift. He'd been working at the station for a few years now, but he never got used to the night shifts. It always felt like time was standing still when he was alone in the studio. The studio was small, with dark walls and a dark wood floor. In the center of the room was a table with a microphone and recording equipment. On the wall opposite the table was a big screen displaying the news and weather. Outside the studio window, the city was lit up by streetlights. The weather was cold and rainy, and Alex could hear the sound of rain pounding on the roof of the studio. He felt a chill run down his spine as the cold air seeped in through the window. Alex sighed and leaned back in his chair, feeling tired and sleepy. His mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about his ex-girlfriend, who had left him a few months ago. He was thinking about his job, which had become boring and routine. He was thinking about doing something new and exciting with his life. Suddenly, he heard a strange hissing sound in his headphones. He thought it was just a technical problem, but when he looked at the equipment, everything seemed to be working fine. The hissing got louder, and he heard a voice speaking to him. "I know you're here," said the voice. Alex was shocked. He didn't know who it was or where the voice was coming from. He tried to respond, but the voice disappeared, leaving him in complete silence. Alex felt his heart racing and his palms getting sweaty. He looked around the room, trying to find the source of the voice, but there was nothing. He was scared. He didn't know what to do. He tried to continue working, but his hands were shaking and he couldn't focus. He felt his legs starting to tremble, and he had to take a few deep breaths to calm down. Suddenly, the hissing sound came back, and the voice spoke again. "I know you heard me," said the voice. Alex knew he had to do something. He couldn't just sit there and wait for the voice to speak again. He decided to call his colleague, who worked at the station during the day, and tell him about the strange voice. But when he called, all he got was a busy signal. His colleague didn't answer. Alex felt a sense of disappointment and fear growing inside him. He was alone in the studio, and the voice spoke again. "You're alone," said the voice. Alex knew he had to do something. He couldn't just sit there and wait for the voice to speak again. He decided to investigate and find out who was behind the voice. He started searching the studio, trying to find the source of the voice. He checked all the equipment, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. He started thinking that the voice might just be his imagination, but he knew that wasn't true. Suddenly, the voice spoke again. "I know you're looking for me," said the voice. Alex was shocked. He didn't know what to do. He tried to respond, but the voice disappeared again, leaving him in complete silence. Alex felt his head spinning, and he had to take a few deep breaths to calm down. He knew he had to do something. He couldn't just sit there and wait for the voice to speak again. He decided to investigate and find out who was behind the voice. Alex started thinking about everything that had happened over the past few days. He thought about his colleagues, his friends, his family, but none of them could be connected to this voice. He thought about his job, his responsibilities, but he couldn't understand how his job could be connected to this voice. He was confused. He didn't know what to do. He felt like his life was changing, but he didn't know how. So he started investigating the strange phenomenon that had occurred in the radio station studio. He didn't know what he would find, but he was ready for anything. Alex knew he had to be careful. He knew he had to be prepared for anything, but he didn't know that his life would never be the same again. Chapter 2: The Voice from the Past. Alex was sitting in the radio station studio, trying to gather his thoughts after the strange incident with the voice. He was still feeling a bit shaken and couldn't understand what had happened. The voice he had heard was so real that he couldn't tell if it was just his imagination or something more unusual. He thought about what had happened over the past few days. He remembered working on a new project, trying to come up with something new and interesting. He remembered talking to his colleagues, trying to get some new ideas. But he couldn't understand how any of that was connected to the voice he had heard. Suddenly, he remembered his old girlfriend, Sarah. They had been together a few years ago, but then she had left him. He thought maybe the voice he had heard was hers. Alex sighed and closed his eyes, trying to remember everything that had happened between them. He remembered how they had met, how they had fallen in love, and how they had broken up. He remembered how he had felt after they had split up, how he had been lonely and unhappy. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the studio had gotten dark. He looked at the clock and saw that his shift was almost over. He knew that his colleague would be coming in soon to replace him. Alex got up from the table and started gathering his things. He felt like he needed to figure out who was behind the voice he had heard. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready for it. He started thinking about how he could find out who was behind the voice. He thought about asking his colleagues if they had heard anything similar. He thought about checking the equipment in the studio to see if there was anything unusual. Suddenly, he heard footsteps outside the studio door. It was his colleague, coming in to replace him. "Hey," Alex said to the colleague, "how was your day?" Alex thought he needed to tell his colleague about the voice he had heard, but he didn't know how to start. "It was weird," he said. "I heard a voice in the studio. It was so real that I couldn't tell if it was just my imagination or something more unusual." The colleague looked at him with surprise. "A voice," he repeated. "What do you mean?" Alex sighed and started telling his colleague about the voice he had heard. He told him how real it had sounded and how he couldn't understand who was behind it. The colleague listened intently, and Alex could see that he was interested. "I don't know what to say," said the colleague, "but I think you should look into it further. You can't just ignore it." Alex nodded. He knew his colleague was right. He needed to figure out who was behind the voice he had heard, and he was ready for it. The colleague started gathering his things to replace Alex in the studio. "I'll be here if you need anything," he said. "Don't hesitate to call me if you need help." Alex smiled and thanked his colleague. He knew he could count on him, and he was ready for whatever came next. When the colleague left, Alex was alone in the studio. He looked around and saw that everything was quiet and peaceful, but he knew that this was just the beginning. He knew that he had a lot to learn and a lot to go through, and he was ready for it. Chapter 3: Messages from the Dark. Alex walked into his apartment, exhausted and worried after his night shift at the radio station. He still couldn't shake off the feeling of unease after hearing that creepy voice in the studio. He flipped on the light, and the bright glow made him squint. His apartment was cozy, with his favorite posters on the walls, books and photos on the shelves, and a plant on the windowsill that was starting to wilt. Outside, the night was dark, with only the occasional flicker of streetlights breaking the gloom. Alex could hear the wind rustling through the trees and the distant hum of traffic. He turned on the TV and made himself a cup of coffee, trying to distract himself from thoughts of the voice. But his mind kept wandering back to the studio and what had happened. Who was that guy? And what did he want? Just as he was starting to relax, his phone buzzed, shattering the silence. Alex glanced at the screen and saw that he had a new message from an unknown number. His heart started racing as he read the message. "I know you heard me. I know you're trying to figure it out, but you'll never understand. You'll never stop me." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. Who was this guy? How did he know about the voice in the studio? And what did he want from Alex? He tried to respond to the message, but the number was blocked. Alex knew he had to do something to stop this guy, but he had no idea where to start. He thought back to what had happened in the studio, trying to remember every detail. He recalled the voice, the words, and what his colleague had said about being careful. Alex knew he had to investigate further to find out who was behind the voice and the messages, but he was clueless about where to begin, and he had no idea what was going to happen next. He stared at his phone, his heart still racing. He knew he had to be prepared for anything, but he had no idea what that anything might be. Just as he was trying to calm down, his phone buzzed again. Alex glanced at the screen and saw that he had another message from the same unknown number. "You think you can stop me? You think you can understand? But you'll never be able to. You'll never be able to." Alex felt his fear spike to a new level. Who was this guy? What did he want from Alex? And what was he going to do next? He felt his head spinning, and his legs started to feel weak. He collapsed onto the couch, feeling like he was going to pass out. He knew he had to do something to stop this guy, but he had no idea what, and he had no idea what was going to happen next. Alex glanced at the clock and saw that it was already late. He knew he should go to bed, but he couldn't relax. He felt his heart still racing, and he knew he wouldn't be able to sleep until he figured out who was behind the voice and the messages. He got up from the couch and started pacing around the room, trying to calm down, but he couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. He felt his fear and anxiety growing with every passing minute. Suddenly, he heard a noise outside his window. He walked over to the window and looked out, but he didn't see anything. He thought it might just be the wind, but he wasn't sure. Alex knew he had to be careful. He knew he had to be prepared for anything, but he had no idea what was going to happen next. Chapter 4: The Descent into Madness. Alex sat in the radio studio, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had been building up inside him since he started receiving those creepy messages. He felt like his life was spiraling out of control. Outside, the rain was pouring down, creating a monotonous drumbeat that seemed to match the rhythm of his heart. The wind was howling, and the trees outside the studio window were swaying back and forth like they were dancing to the beat of the rain. Alex was dressed in a black shirt and black pants, which were soaked from the rain. His hair was long and wet, and it fell across his face like a curtain. He felt like he was floating on air, like his body had become one with the radio studio. He started broadcasting, but his voice wasn't the same as usual. It sounded strange, like someone else was speaking through him. Alex felt like his body had become a part of the radio station, connected to it through wires and antennas. He started talking about things he had never talked about before. He talked about fear, paranoia, and madness. His words were like poison, seeping into the ears of his listeners and destroying their minds. People who listened to the broadcast started to feel a strange sensation. They felt like their minds were unraveling, like they were losing control of themselves. They started to see things that didn't exist, hear voices that no one else could hear. The city began to change. Time stood still, and people lived in fear and paranoia. They were afraid to go outside, afraid to talk to each other. They felt like they were living in a world where reality had become distorted. The rain kept pouring down, and the city became a dark and cold place. The streetlights were out, and only the lightning illuminated the sky. People walked down the streets, wrapped in raincoats and umbrellas, and they looked like ghosts. Alex continued to broadcast, but he was no longer himself. He had become a part of the dark energy that was destroying the city. He felt like he was losing control of himself, like he was becoming a part of something bigger than himself. People started to disappear, one by one. No one knew where they went, but everyone knew they wouldn't come back. The city became a place where time stood still, where people lived in fear and paranoia. Alex sat in the studio, his eyes empty, his voice monotone. He talked about things he had never talked about before. He talked about the end of the world, the destruction of the city, the demise of humanity. And then, the broadcast stopped. The studio was empty, Alex was gone. But his voice still echoed in people's ears, his words still destroying their minds. The city lay in ruins, people lived in fear and paranoia. Time stood still, and no one knew what would happen next. Alex had become a part of the dark energy that was destroying the city, and no one knew how to stop him.